I've never been the most talented goalkeeper, but I've been the absolute best at not giving up. Like I think that I really suck at giving up.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Invincible Goalkeeping Podcast. Today, I have another pro goalkeeper. He has been playing pro for 2 years now. He's played at colleges like USC Upstate,
Yep.
University of Alabama, Huntsville, and Lee University in Tennessee. He's also a teammate of mine for the past 2 years here at Carolina Core. But let's welcome onto the podcast pro goalkeeper Robert Bailey. How are we doing, Rob?
We're doing great, man.
Yes, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Feeling good?
It's a pleasure. Feeling great.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. How has the season been? Just before we get into it, how's the season been so far?
I think it's been good. We've got a good goalkeeper union, so I think that trainings have been really good. Um, I think the boys are pushing hard for playoffs, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, it's been a great experience. Playing pro has been my dream since I was a kid, and so every day that I get to do that, I just love life. So,
I love it. I love it. Let's get into that. So, how did you first become a goalkeeper? Tell me the story of how that began.
so the first time I played in net was probably like my second season of playing soccer. I remember I did like a fall at Upward Sports in South Carolina when I was 8 years old, and I was just in the field running around scoring goals, and you weren't allowed to count score, but I counted score after every goal. And then my parents moved me from that to a little bit of a higher rec league called ASO. And I remember that I hadn't played in that the entire season in the spring. And then I guess my team made it to the championship, and they threw me a net the first time ever. And warming up, I had never played keeper before, never put on gloves before, but I was just diving around, and I threw my head into the post in warm ups. And so that was my first experience, and saved a
Explains a
penalty.
lot.
Yeah,
Explains a lot.
it explains a lot. Yeah, but I remember saving a penalty that game, and that was really fun. But I didn't really fall in love with it then. I think I still loved being. I was a winger when I was younger, and I still loved doing that until maybe about, I'd say 13. Around 13 is when I was splitting time in net because I always kind of stuck with it because I've always been tall and athletically inclined, and so it was kind of natural to throw me in net. And I remember our starter got hurt, and so I had to play every game, and I started to really do good, and I started to really like it. And my coach at the time told me, like, you could actually do something with this, and so I bought into that. And then on top of that, I could legally hit people. And so for 13, 14-year-old Robbie, I loved that. And so that's kind of what made me fall in love with it. And it's taken off ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How would you say you progressed to college? How did you get recruited, and how did that journey go?
Yeah. So I never had a keeper coach until I would say junior year of high school. I would say that everything from 13 years old and up until I was about 17 was just my dad and I looking at YouTube. And I had a coach who actually, he was English, and he played for Watford. When he lived in England, he was younger. He got injured, came to the States. Had a long journey, but he tried to help me as much as he could. But he was an outfield player, and so naturally he just couldn't do too much. But we all could tell that I had some talent there. And so my dad and I were just trying to make do, watching random videos on YouTube and learn things, and we had no idea what we were doing. And then when I was 17, we met these two guys who were ex pros, and they were good keeper coaches. They were a bit crazy, but they were good keeper coaches, and so started to refine some of the techniques and tendencies that I needed to have. Being with those two guys got me to my final club, which was CISA, Carolina Elite Soccer Academy, and I played ECNL there. And I think being with those two keeper coaches led me to CISA because they were connected with CISA,
Mm.
and being able to play at CISA. I think that's probably the only reason I made it to college because I got a lot of exposure. I had probably 5 or 6 keeper coaches at the club alone. And so then I was getting consistent keeper training 5 days a week. And when I was getting that, I loved it. I think that's what I missed a lot when I was probably in my early years of playing keepers. I just didn't have a coach and I didn't know that I needed one. But once I did, I just absolutely loved it. And I mean, that's how UC Upstate, that's how the coaches noticed me, was at a couple of CISA games because it was local, and they thought I had something that they could work with, and so they brought me in, and yeah, that's how I got to Upstate.
It's crazy. Didn't have a keeper coach until 17.
Probably didn't have a proper
Insane.
one. I maybe did 1 or 2 sessions with random coaches that came in, but yeah, never had anything proper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. So we go to USC Upstate.
Yep.
What was the time like there? And then how did you eventually go to the next school, Alabama, Huntsville, and then
Yeah.
to Lee University? 3 different schools. It's kind of a unique journey.
Yeah, it's not the journey that most people have. Yeah, Upstate was great. I loved it. I met some of my best friends there. I spent 3 years there, freshman, sophomore, and then my fall semester junior year. Freshman year was definitely a eye opening experience. I think I went into college not knowing what the level was like, never being exposed to it, and when I saw what the D1 level was like, I realized very quickly I was not ready to play. I had a great keeper coach. Shout out Evan Rogers. He's kind of turned me into what I am today. But I had freshman year with him. COVID hit that spring, and then we had a lot of training together over COVID because we were both local. Um, and I think that's what really helped my career. Because in the fall freshman year just was not at the level. I was this height, but I was very very skinny. Didn't have the frame I needed to, and so that's when I needed to start hitting the gym, and I did, and then I had a lot of training with Evan. COVID hit, and then that's when I started to really think that I could go pro and wanted to go pro because once the team aspect of it was taken away, and then I really realized like I really do love this game, like,
Mm.
and so I had a lot of training with my keeper coach there, and that kind of caught me up to where I needed to be probably the previous year,
Mm.
and then that 2020 fall and then 2020 spring was kind of that COVID season that we had where we didn't have a fall, and then we had that spring season. And I think that was really huge for me because it saved a year of eligibility.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what year are you at this point?
So that was my sophomore year.
Okay.
Yep. So freshman was
Yeah.
2019.
Okay.
Got a red shirt that year because didn't play a single minute.
Mm-hmm,
Just was not at the
mm-hmm.
level. Sophomore year was COVID year. So going into my junior year, I still had 4 years of eligibility. And so
It's insane.
it's mental.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had some good a good spring and then summer of goalkeeper training. Still always kind of feeling like I was playing catch up.
Yeah.
The starting guy at Upstate was an international player who was really good.
Mm.
He was really good with his feet. He had been in professional academies before, and so I kind of got to see him and see like this is the level I need to be at. Instead of looking at him thinking, why am I not playing over him?
Mm.
I think when I first came in, I looked at him and maybe a few other guys and was like, I feel like I deserve to play over them.
Mm.
But then quickly I realized that's not the case at all. I've got to catch up. I got to
Mm.
take what I can from their game. Um, and so then, spring of 21, summer of 21, going into that junior season of fall, I I felt I was ready to play for the first time. I think freshman sophomore year, I knew I probably wasn't ready. And I've always been confident, but I've always been self aware, and
Mm.
I've known if I'm at a level or not. And I felt ready for the first time, and I played halves in all the preseason games and did well, and it just wasn't meant to be from the coaching side of things, and on my side, like that happens in football.
Mm.
Sometimes there's just not agreements, and I I knew pretty early on in that season that I needed to move on. I knew that I needed to go somewhere that was potentially a step lower and kind of earn it a bit more. And so I knew I needed to go probably Division 2. I needed to play. And so I decided probably early on in September of that season. I knew I was going to transfer, and so I started crafting my transfer email, getting everything ready. I created a spreadsheet of probably 200 or 300 coaches, all spread out from D1 to D2 to NAIA. I came up with everything, and I kind of picked. I emailed all those schools, but I kind of picked probably about 30 that I thought I'd be a good fit for. And funny enough, UAH Alabama Huntsville was number one, and I didn't think it would be number one, but once the season ended at Upstate, I had my meeting with the coaches, told them I was going to transfer. I still love those guys. They're great. They're great people, great coaches, and so for me, there's no ill will. They wish me best of luck, and I started sending out emails, went in the transfer portal, and sent my email to Alabama Huntsville among probably another 100 schools, 150, and that coach responded back to me, and we started having conversations. And coming from a D1 with no minutes to a D2 is kind of a risk. I think it's kind of a risk going anywhere. And the coach laid it out pretty simple. He was like, "I'm going to play you in the spring games, and if you do well, the spot's yours. If not, you're going to sit on the bench." And so he told me there was no athletic money, and I'd have to really take a risk here. And for me, that's all I needed. And I knew that that was the opening that I needed. And so after talks with my parents, and we had a lot of meetings about it, and prayer about it, and we knew that UAH was where I was meant to go,
Mm.
and we knew that that opportunity was all I needed. And so for me, I yeah, we ended up at Alabama Huntsville in the spring, and had a great spring semester. A lot of learning, a lot of um, a lot of realizing what it takes to be the guy.
Mm.
I guess that's something I missed for 3 years.
Mm.
Wasn't playing for 3 years, and so when I ended up at Huntsville and playing in that spring, I was like, okay, this is what it's like to play
Mm.
games again. I had the adrenaline rush, and finally had some excitement again. And so that was a great spring for me, and I earned the spot going into that fall semester.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, so how long were you there?
So I spent 3 semesters at Huntsville. So I
Okay.
did I did the spring of 22, fall of 22, spring of 23.
Okay.
So I played that spring, earned my spot for the coming fall. In the summer, played some played some USL2, UPSL with South Carolina Bantams and the South Carolina Heat.
Mm.
Loved my time there. Met some really cool guys, and a lot of good training and a lot of exposure to really high D1 players.
Mm.
And then coming into that fall, in my head, I knew it was a big fall because I kind of knew that if I wanted to go pro, I might not be able to stay at Huntsville the whole time.
Mm.
I also knew that Huntsville had an MLS Next Pro team coming, and so I knew that there probably was an opportunity if I stayed. But I just knew that if I wanted to go pro, that season needed to be good because it needed to kind of set the precedence for the remaining 2 years I had, whether I stayed or not. I hadn't decided by then. Um, so going into that fall season, we played one preseason game, did well in that. Second preseason game, pulled my left hip flexor, and so I'm starting the season injured, and so I was just in shambles.
Mm.
Honestly, I'm sitting there thinking, why is this happening? Like, this is really bad timing, man. Like, I need to get healthy, and it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was too much of a low point because I knew it was very light, and I knew I'd be back after a few weeks, and it was just kind of it was a struggle at the time because I was going to miss the first 4 games. And so for me, those are big out of conference games where I think conference matters the most. But those out of conference games are against some big opponents from Florida. And those are some good teams, and that's some good exposure. And so I missed those, and that really hurt. But it just fueled me to get back healthy. And so
Mm.
once I did, I started my I started my first collegiate game um, as a senior academically, which
Mm.
was pretty funny. But I think that just goes to show that everybody's journey is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started my first game against West Florida, a really good Division II
Mm-hmm.
powerhouse, and I had a really good game. We didn't win, and it was a learning experience for me and the boys. But I mean that game, I went in very confident because I knew the work I'd put in for 3 years. It was 3 years of training, prepping. We've talked about this before for that moment that's coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I just knew that something was coming.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it was going to pay off, and that game kind of set the standard for me for the rest of the season. I had a good season. We didn't quite make conference playoffs. So we were in a really tough conference, but I had a pretty good season. I learned a lot, and it was probably the season I needed
Oh.
to set myself up for success going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was your first fall at Huntsville,
Yeah.
and then you come back another year, right?
No,
No.
I leave
Okay.
pretty quickly.
So
Yeah, yeah. So
third school.
yeah, so I wanted to stay at Huntsville. Um, Financially, it just wasn't on the books.
Mm.
They were a powerhouse in a lot of different sports, and so there's a lot of athletic money put towards other sports. And unfortunately, the soccer suffered a little bit from that. I
Mm.
think that they probably should have been given a bit more. Great head coach there, great assistants. I think they pour a lot into the team, and I think that they deserve probably a little bit more. But that's not for me to judge. I'm not the athletic director. But so I had a talk with my coach at the end of the year, and we kind of both agreed like I just can't financially afford to stay. I really wanted to, especially with Huntsville City coming. I knew it could be good opportunities there. So I entered the transfer portal again for a second time, and this experience was a little bit different. I had a lot of teams reaching out, Division I and Division II. Talked to a lot of great schools, great coaches, and then I ended up going with Lee University right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. Um, they were in the same conference as us, and so they had gotten to see me, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that they picked me up. And um, it was the right fit. It felt right, and so I committed and signed there December, right after that fall season. Because that spring, I kind of wanted to be done before the spring. Um, I knew that if I transferred, I probably wouldn't be allowed to train in the spring at Huntsville, and so I wanted to get locked up by a team and then kind of have some opportunities to train with maybe Huntsville City or Chattanooga FC, which I did. So going into that spring, I had opportunities to train with both of them, and so I spent a lot of time with Chattanooga FC when they were in NISA, getting ready to switch to MLS Next Pro, and then I had a lot of trainings with Huntsville City, and I think those two experiences alone, again, play a major part in me going pro because I got thrown into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
I was just a training keeper, but at the same time, I was involved a lot. And so my standard had to be high, and I very quickly realized what it took to be pro. But then it was also a bit different than when I first got into college, where I knew I wasn't ready. When I was training with these guys, I kind of felt like, okay, I've got some attributes that are here. I've got some parts of my game that are potentially pro ready, but then I've got some parts of my game that I still got to play catch up on, and I think that was really good to get exposed to that pretty early, um, in terms of when my season at least started. And so I got a lot of experience at Chattanooga, getting my feet better as a keeper because that was certainly lacking than what it needed to be. Huntsville was probably just more of having a thicker skin and a better mentality because MLS Next Pro team there, they're cutthroat. They're a great team, and the coaching staff at the time were very headstrong. And for me, that kind of I realized like how much thick skin I need to
Yeah.
have. And yeah, so then took that into the summer. Had a great NPSL season with Georgia Storm. Shout out Stephen Bivens. That's a cool guy. But had a great season there. Um, and then going into the fall at Lee, um, played about 7 or 8 games. had some good games, had some not so good ones. It was a learning experience again, and at the end of that season, I kind of decided that I'd probably either leave again or transition into something different, and so that can take us into your next question if
Yeah.
you'd like.
So
Yeah,
a long college journey,
yeah, very. Yeah,
but then now, what? How did you sign pro? How did that all come about after
yeah,
the year at Lee?
yeah. So Lee, it didn't go exactly as I planned, but I know that everything that happened for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for my time at Lee. I mean, I met a lot of great guys, got exposed to the pro world, played in some games, met my fiance. So a lot of
Getting married this off season.
getting married this off season.
Congrats.
There we go. Yeah. But I know that everything that happened at Lee was meant to happen, and I never doubted that. Looking back on it, I think at the time there's a lot of prayers and a lot of questions being asked, but I was super thankful for my time there. At the end of that season, I had decided I was either going to try and transfer again for my last
For
year,
fourth.
fourth time, or I was going to quit.
Yeah.
I was probably going to hang him up and coach because I knew I was really passionate about goalkeeping, and I might have had a computer science degree, working on a master's in business, but to me that didn't matter. I just loved the game, and I knew that I needed to be around it somehow, and so I was kind of ready to. I was in a place where I was ready to be done. Um, my best friend Orion McHugh, he's also quite a journeyman himself in college, but he me and him were both going to go up to Michigan for a big combine, kind of see if we can go pro. He had another year at a really good school, and I was probably looking at being done. So both of us were like, well, let's just see if we can go pro now. Like, why not? So we were planning to go to the Midwest Pro Combine. Lots of teams there, lots of players go pro from there. And then we were just on, and I remember one day we were just on FaceTime talking about soccer. And, at one point we just end up on Instagram, like, and one guy's looking at something, the other's looking at something else. And he comes across Carolina Core Open Tryout. And it's like, at the time, it was like $40. And it was the first two had already happened, but I think it was like in 2 weeks we have our last one. And so Orion was like, Rob, we gotta do this. Like it was 30 minutes from where he lived, and then I would just fly up from there to Michigan. And so for me, I was like, yeah, why not? Like I'll go knock off some rust and just kick a ball around and just get ready for the big one because I didn't think anything would come of this. I knew that historically open tryouts aren't the highest percentage way of going pro. But I also knew that anything could happen. So we come to the tryout, and I felt great. Like I just felt very loose, very free, and I knew that whatever happened that day was meant to be. And so we're maybe 10 minutes into the goalkeeper warm up, and the goalkeeper coach. It was not Donovan. It was one of Eddie's friends, but the goalkeeper coach at the time, or I guess who was filling in to help. He liked me right away and started asking me some questions about who I was, where I was from, and I thought it was a bit weird, but I also thought it was probably good. And so um, I was trying to lock in, and this guy's just asking me like where I'm from, like my life story, and I was like, I mean, this is great. Why not? So I was talking to him. I get put on some random low field, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's how this day is going to go. I kind of thought it was over by then. Um, Played about 10, 15 minutes on one of the lower fields, hit some good pings, made a few saves. My team was pretty rough, if I remember. And then I'm almost positive Andy Williams, our scout, was the one watching me on that field. I remember him pulling me off, putting another keeper on, and I just go to him. I'm like, did I like mess up or something? Because I thought I'd been playing good. And he was like, no, go to the top field. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I thought something could be happening. And so I run on up to the top field. There's like 20 random turf fields. We've been to it, Ashboro, Zuplex, yeah. So I'm like running, sprinting up there, trying to get there soon so I don't miss anything. And Roy and Eddie are on the same sideline. Unfortunately, I did not know who they were prior to this, but I learned.
Just
And
the GM and the head coach last year.
yeah, this is our GM and our head coach. And so I didn't know who they were beforehand, really. Probably lack of ball knowledge on my end, but I show up and I go and talk to Roy. I'm like, hey, I got told by this dude down here to come up here, and he's like, oh yeah, go. And so I sub in instantly, and I'm like, oh okay, like it's not really much of a warm up. It's just kind of getting thrown into the highest level at that tryout, and I was like, okay, well let's ball out. And so I again hit a lot of good pings, made some great saves. I remember Cruyff turning a striker. Haven't done that since, but I remember doing it. And then we kind of split for lunch, and Eddie and his friend came up and talked to me again, and just wanted to know where I've been at, kind of who I was. I mean, obviously we submitted an application, but I'm sure they didn't take too long to look at it. But after they saw me playing, they started to ask a bit. And so going into lunch, I kind of knew I was doing well, and I knew I needed to keep doing well. And so we go into some small sided games. A select bunch got taken for some small sided games. Um, I tend to do well in small sided. And yeah, went from that back into 11s. And then at the end of all of that, did really well. And Eddie comes up to me and they offered me a contract. So from open tryout, I signed here. So it was a bit
It's
crazy.
insane.
Yeah.
But no, that's a crazy journey, right? We said 3 schools
Yeah.
in 5 years.
Yeah.
Signs pro from an open tryout. So biggest things I want you guys to take from this is that I think a lot of you may not be at the biggest school in the world, right? Like Rob played at not the most glamorous schools,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Played at 3 of them. His last year at his last school doesn't even play all the games,
Yeah.
right? Got
Correct.
benched
Yeah.
at some point,
Yeah.
and he goes to an open tryout, and now he's a 2-year professional keeper. So
Yeah.
for me, I talk about it a lot. I think sometimes we can think where we're at right now defines who we are as people, but I think he's an excellent example to show that if you continue to put the work in, you never know what's in front of you. And another thing I love from your story is that you took the initiative to get yourself into the right environment, right?
Yep.
Realize that USC upstate wasn't, the right place for you at the time.
Yeah.
And you, like you said, reach out to 150 to 300 schools, right? You got to put yourself out there. No one's going to be the one to hold your hand and to get you recognized. Maybe you might have someone who comes to your game and sees you and recognizes your talent, but at the end of the day, it's your career, and you got to be the one to take the initiative. And you see Rob, quite frankly, from not a lot of goalkeeper training for the first time at 17, has a tough college journey, having to go to different places, but at the end of the day, he's made it to be a pro, and he's just getting started in his pro career. So for me, it's a very inspiring journey, and so that's amazing. But so transitioning to being pro, what would you say have been some of the biggest lessons you've learned so far as a pro?
I think the biggest one is that the game at this point is more mental than physical. I'd say. I think especially for keepers, I think we're in a role where only one of us plays, and so then if you're on a team of 3 keepers like we are, you got a 2 and a 3 who aren't playing, and so I think the game transitions from are you good enough to then kind of like can you just keep sticking through it all? Because I think we all know that if we've made it, we're good enough. Um, and so we've got the talent. Every day in training, we're still honing that talent. We're still getting better. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, how's your mental? Are you mentally able to deal with going through some hard stuff? Are you mentally able to deal with not playing, in my case, for 2 years, and kind of just waiting for your time, whether that's here or at another club? And so I think that's the biggest lesson, and probably the most important I've learned being pro is that your mentality has to be unlike anything else. It has to be not perfect, but almost perfect. You have to be able to handle hard stuff. You got to be able to kind of take it on the chin and move on, and you've got to kind of motivate yourself in a sense. You can't play for anyone else. You can't try and please anyone else on the field. You kind of have to go out there every day, work hard, and know that eventually your time is coming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that mental toughness of knowing that
Yeah.
kind of like we just said before, your current circumstance doesn't define you, but
Yeah.
being ready for an opportunity that may not come for weeks, months, or even years. So
Yeah.
no, I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. What would you say has been one of the biggest surprises of the pro game that maybe in college you expected pro to be, but being in the pro game it was a big surprise.
I would say that the biggest surprise is the difference in everyone's approach to the game. So I think in college we get exposed to a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures, and I think that's awesome. I love that. I think in college I kind of thought that would just be a college thing. I think when before I went pro, I kind of had this idea in my head that everyone that was pro they were all like robots. And so I think I had this idea that everyone thought the same about every aspect of recovery or warm ups or gym, how they eat, any aspect of life. I kind of thought that all pros were like all on. They all had this like secret book, and they all read the book and they all followed what was in it. And so when I went pro, I learned that that was just not the case at all. Not saying that's a bad thing. I think I've also learned that everyone has their own way of doing things in their day to day life, and what works for them. Whether or not I think maybe they need to do gym more or something else, but I think that's probably been the biggest surprise is that you've whatever I thought I had in terms of diversity in terms of culture in college. I think it's gotten even bigger. At least being here at core,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's been the
Yeah,
biggest shock. Yeah,
I think you make a good point of like people have their ways of locking in and preparing, and
yeah,
I think it almost makes you focus even more so on yourself of knowing that you can't control all these other guys and the
yeah,
things that they do.
yeah,
you know you can only control what you can control, and
yeah,
just making sure that you're ready to play and to help the team. But it could be tough because right, it's a team sport, and
yeah,
you kind of want to control as much as you can, but at the end of
yeah,
the day,
yeah.
all we can do is just make the most of ourselves and be ready for our opportunities. But no, I think that's a good lesson. So you kind of talked about it, you touched upon it when we were talking about your story, but
Mhm.
um, back in high school, skinny,
Yeah,
but now the gym. I know for you is a big part of your
yeah,
preparation.
yeah.
What would you say is the importance for a young keeper? Maybe not super young, but let's just say high school age. What's the importance of them getting into the gym? What would you say?
Yeah, I think from a goalkeeping aspect, it's important first and foremost because we need to be more athletic than field players. I think there's a lot of stigma around goalkeeping that the kid who can't run is put in net,
Full
or
fat
the
kid.
yeah, like the fat kid gets put in net. I think there's a lot of stigma around that, and I think that's I think if you look at some of the top goalkeepers in the world, I don't think that's true. I think you look at Neuer, you look at Donnarumma, you look at Courtois, you look at
Tim Howard.
Allison, Tim Howard, um, Matt Turner, Matt Freeze. Now, like you look at these guys, they're athletic freaks. Like they're not short fat kids,
Yeah.
or they're not kids who can't run. Like they're freaks and they're athletic. And so I think the gym, I think it's one of the most important aspects of goalkeeping. And I think the younger that kids can get in, probably starting like around middle school, high school, I think that can only help your career. I mean, you think of different aspects of goalkeeping. We need to be able to claim crosses confidently, whether that's catching or punching. And to do that, if you're going to have a striker trying to kill you, you need to be able to hit him back. And so you've got to have some mass, you got to have some muscle to be able to handle a hit and still claim the ball or get a good punch. And so I think the gym first and foremost helps with that. And then I think our we quite literally have to jump as high as we can or as far to the side as we can to save a ball. And the only way that that's going to get better without natural genetics is the gym, is you know hitting legs, doing a lot of plyometrics, a lot of jumps, like incorporated with that. And so I think that I think at the time I didn't think gym was important at all when I was in high school. I think that's just because I didn't know. I mean, I was this tall. I was 6'2", 6'3", and 145 pounds. And so I just had no idea. And then I get to the college game and I just got bullied. And so then I realized like, okay, I've got to bulk up. And so, I increased how much I was eating. I increased how much I was going to the gym tenfold. And for me, it was a process. It took about 8 months. It took a long time. Some people it takes less, some people it takes longer. But after those 8 months, I went from 145 to 185 and had good muscle mass. Also had probably a bit of body fat, and had to rearrange, like my workouts and how much I was eating once I got to that point. But I think goalkeepers need to be athletic freaks. We have to be.
Yeah.
No.
So maybe you've sold someone on the idea of getting in the gym.
Yeah.
Where do they practically start in high school? Finding some programming, or
Yeah.
finding someone who can show them how to do it. I mean, even for you, how did you
Yeah. So
practically start doing it?
yeah. So I was a bit lucky. I had a friend, one of my best friends. He was a bodybuilder, and he really loved lifting for aesthetics. But a lot of those lifts also go hand in hand for athletics, and so he's the one who kind of got me into the gym. And he was able to show me the ropes and show me form for bench press, squat, deadlift, and a lot of these things. And so I think, as far as my case goes, the more I got into that, and then once college rolled around and I got more involved with my strength coach, um, I started to take a bit more. Um, I started to take it upon myself to learn more, because I knew my strength coach knew he knew what he was talking about. I wanted to know what I was talking about.
Mm,
And so I think we've got great tools nowadays like Instagram, YouTube, even TikTok, where there's a lot of credible people on there who post their lifts. And so I haven't done it in a while, but I'm sure if I were to go on YouTube or Instagram, and if I were to go find athletic lower body um, exercises, I'd probably have some that came up, some back squats, box squats, Bulgarian split squats, and then jumps paired in with that. YouTube and Instagram have been massive, I think, in terms of that. And there's a lot of credible people, I would say, that are posting that content. I would say just got to make sure we're staying away from pure influencers
yeah.
that I think are posting stuff just for likes and comments.
Mm,
And you got to find the guys that are like, okay, this is a professional athlete posting this.
mm.
That he probably knows what he's talking about, and so I'd look more towards those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I think one thing again I appreciate about you is that um, you take the initiative, right?
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of you could use the excuse that like, oh, I don't have a coach, I don't have a this or that. Maybe 20, 30 years ago that could have been the case, but nowadays, like you said, we have YouTube, we have Instagram,
Yeah.
we have TikTok. There, all the information is out there. Do I think it's best for you to have a coach that can walk you through and make sure that you're doing correct form? I think that would probably be the best.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that in your current situation, if you don't have the money, go look up some stuff online. You
Yeah.
got some amazing information. And I think Rob is a great example that man, one of my favorite quotes, it's the greatest resource is resourcefulness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not having the best gym with the best coach. Again, those things would be great, but if you don't have it, how resourceful can you get? How creative can you get? And because if you use it as an excuse that I don't have this coach or that, you're just going to sit in the same spot and never get any better. While again, all the information is out there at our fingertips. So
Yeah.
I love that.
100%.
You've kind of touched upon it again earlier, but you talked about prayers and faith. I know you're a Christian, you're
Yeah.
a man of God.
Yeah.
How would you say that God's role and your faith has played throughout your journey, and just staying faithful in what His plan has been for you, and
Yeah.
helping kind of keep your mind in a good place throughout all the ups and downs?
Yeah, I think it's been the most important thing. I was raised Christian, but I don't think I made it my own until I got to college. I think whenever you're raised in a certain way, and for me, I went to a private school as well. I think sometimes you can kind of get lulled to sleep, and I don't think that's good, but I think that can happen. But I think once I got to college and I got exposed to unfortunate circumstances, I kind of had to be my own person.
Mm.
And I think that's when I started to really like make my faith my own. And I mean, I think it was probably the only thing that kept me going. I think obviously I've had great family support, and that helped a lot. But I think that the thing that kept me playing was my faith in God. And I remember distinctly when I transferred from upstate to UAH. I mean, for me, that was completely new. And so I was unbelievably out of my comfort zone, and I was taking a huge risk. And so that was there's two distinct moments. That was the first one where I completely gave into the idea that I'm surrendering to the unknown. I'm surrendering to God. I'm surrendering my my path, my journey. I might want to go pro. It doesn't matter. Like for me, it doesn't matter what I want. It only matters what God has in store for me. And then for me to work as hard as I possibly can towards what that might be, or towards where He has placed me. Um, and so I knew that He had placed me at Upstate, and it was my purpose to work as hard as I could while I was there. I knew that when I decided to transfer, He would lead me somewhere, and wherever that may be is where I then need to work as hard as I possibly can. Um, there's a really um, I don't think it's cringy myself, but some people do. I think it's my favorite quote is it's this idea that you and God are on a boat, and it's not your job to steer the boat. It's your job to row the boat, and it's God's job to steer the boat. And that has kind of been like a very large aspect of my life, is that I don't know what my purpose in 10 years is, or 10 years after that, or even 5 years from now, or even 1 year. The only thing I know is that where I'm at right now is where God's placed me, and I need to work as hard as I possibly can while I'm here. So that was the first moment where I've got this idea of surrendering completely to the unknown, to what God has planned for me. And then the second was right after Lee, when I almost quit completely. I was ready to be done. I was questioning, why was this happening, God? And then I realized, kind of in my questioning, I was like, who am I to question Him? That's a like that in itself is pridefulness. Like who am I to think that I have any authority to question the creator of everything, the man who's guided me everywhere in my life and guided everyone on this planet. And so for me, that really hit close to home, and I was just like, all right, Rob, you got to shut up, dude. You got to just shut up and completely buy back into this. Like this is what you've done for years, and this is what you're gonna do for years. And so I think that first transfer helped with that, getting to that moment where I again was kind of lost. Um, and I completely trusted Him. And I mean, it's taken me here. And I think the only reason I am where I am is because of the Lord. So
Mm,
yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't want to be an evangelist or anything, but I think you have to have some kind of faith in your life, right? Some belief in God. Obviously we're both Christians, and I don't want to push that on anyone, but I think this journey, I would say life in general, but this journey of pro soccer and what I know some of you are after, there are way too many ups and downs to not have faith in something bigger than just yourself.
Yeah.
So, and I think it's amazing how you've continued to push through. But I think having that faith in God has surely
Yeah.
been one of the strongest reasons why
100%.
you
Yeah.
kept going. So I love that. But just to wrap up, I want to know what would be the single biggest piece of advice you would give to a young goalkeeper, one that maybe feels like maybe you felt kind of behind, like, oh, you see all these young keepers who are in MLS academies at eight
Yeah.
years old,
Yeah.
right? So maybe feeling a little behind the eight ball, but what would
Yeah.
be the single biggest piece of advice you would give to a young keeper?
I would say the biggest thing is just don't stop. Is just don't stop. Just work as hard as you possibly can. Um, and try not to compare yourself to other goalkeepers at your current moment, because there's no telling where you could be at in 5 or 10 years. And I think I'm a perfect example of that. I've always said that I've never been the most talented goalkeeper, but I've been the absolute best at not giving up. Like I think that I really suck at giving up. And I'm just not gonna
It's a good
stop.
trait.
I think it's a great trait, yeah, and I think that the biggest advice I can have or I can say is be bad at giving up. Like just be really bad at it. And when people tell you to try and maybe it's not this isn't meant for you, like what do they know?
Mm.
I think just keep working hard, just keep grinding at it, and eventually it's going to pay off. It could be a year from now, it could be 5, it could be 10. Um,
Could be tomorrow.
it could be tomorrow. You absolutely never know when it could be,
Yeah.
and I think that's um, I think the biggest thing I can say is just don't stop.
Mm.
Just keep working.
I love that.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes, I think we've talked about it, but I'd seen it on a board at some place I was doing physical therapy years ago, but it said, "You never know when you're moments away from a breakthrough." And I've
Yeah.
seen that so many times in my career and in my life. And I think he makes a great point. It could be years from now, but it could be, it could be today. It could
Yeah.
be tomorrow. You never know when
Yeah.
you're going to get an opportunity or when, all that hard work is going to pay off. I think you also make a great point of how someone's opinion of you. One of my favorite, another quote from one of my favorite motivational speakers. He says, "Someone's opinion of you doesn't have to become your reality."
Yeah.
So maybe a teacher or a coach has told you something in the day of you're not good enough for this or you're not cut out for that. But at the end of the day, the only person whose opinion matters is what you have of yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I mean, I'm sure both of us have been told, "Hey, you're not good enough to make it here or there." But
100%.
we've kept going, and we're at where we're at nowadays or now. But I think Rob, like I said, is an excellent testimony of persistence and just never knowing where you're going to be if you just keep persisting and keep going. But final question: what is your favorite thing about being a goalkeeper or just goalkeeping in general?
Oh, favorite thing about goalkeeping. I think it's that everyone thinks we're crazy. I think my favorite thing is that everyone looks at us and is like, "Oh, you're a goalkeeper. You're insane." And for me, I love that. I love being the isolated person that is probably got some problems. Like I think that we have to do a job that no one else wants to do, and we have to be almost perfect at it or attempt to be perfect at it. And for me, I love that pressure. I love the. I've always thrived on that. I think it's an adrenaline rush, and it's one of the reasons I started playing keeper in the first place. Is I get to do something no one wants to do, and I get to be really good at it. And so I just love that everyone looks at keepers like we're crazy because we probably are, and I think I just own it. There's no point in denying it. We get to do something that's a bit psycho, but we get to have fun with it. So
Mm,
that's my favorite. Yeah,
yeah. Now I would say that adrenaline rush of, I mean, making the save, but also playing in a big game in a big
yeah,
moment. Man,
yeah.
there's nothing like it.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, this has been great. This is all I've got for Rob. But I will say this podcast episode has been a year plus in the making. We've been talking about it,
Yeah, it's been
but
a while.
we finally have gotten it done. But I'd like to thank Rob for his time.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, share, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.